I just slept here for 2 hours. It's a good day to be a wind turbine. Unless you don't like working, in which case it's an awful day to be a wind turbine. So this is pretty funny. I've walked about 6 miles now since that water stop. And if you recall, when I was at the water stop, I filmed a wind turbine. So that wind turbine is the one just right over there. So as the crow flies, I'm only like a mile away from that last water stop. Trail, it took 6 miles because I came out, all the way out and around that ridge and back. This is where I slept last night, right on the trail. It was kind of fun. As I was waking up, I watched the sunrise right through this field. I think really the only fun update for today is that I'm officially in and among the hikers. Yesterday I met 3 different hikers on trail. Today I met 5 hikers on trail. And when I'm looking in these logbooks, as you keep going forward, there are more and more names stacked up on each date. And so when I say logbook, I mean about like every 25 to 50 miles on the trail, there's a trail registry with a little composition book in there and a pen. And then it's voluntary, but if you want to, you can sign your name in there. And so people usually do their trail name and then the city and state or country that they're from. And then sometimes they write 1 or 2 other words. Some people do fun drawings. And so anyway, through these logbooks, you can look all the way through to the beginning of this year to see every single person who chose to sign in there. That is an orange just sitting there. I'm not going to eat it, but what a strange thing. It's like unsuccessful trail magic. And so the neat thing about the logbooks being behind everybody, I can see kind of where the bubble is. And it's funny, it's like a bell curve. On the outskirts, on the back end, there were for 3 or 4 days in a row, just one name. So when I started on trail for the first logbooks that I found, there was nobody in them for the next week and a half. So I started out if I started on technically June 8th, but basically June 9th, the last people to started on May 31st. So they were 10 days ahead when they started. And as you looked ahead, starting about 10 days out, you'd see a scattering of names. But just 1 or 2 per day. And then when you looked another week ahead, you'd see 4 or 5 names per day. And then if I went a whole, let's say month ahead, I would say even 3 or 4 weeks ahead, you'd see 20 to 30 names per day. And so that's the bubble. And I think if you went even further, a month and a half, you'd sometimes see 30 names per day. So anyway, I caught the back end of the bell curve maybe a week ago. And as I keep hiking forward, I'm now seeing more and more people per day, which for me is cool because I've never experienced this kind of hiking before, as I've already said. Because the Arizona Trail, just a handful of people hike that per year. And then on the Appalachian Trail, I started in January, so ahead of most people. Passed a ton of people in the first week, and then I maybe met like 10 other thru hikers over the course of the rest of the trail. And I think for the last 2 months there, I pretty much met nobody on trail except for Finisher, who passed me in the Mahoosuc Notch. So now starting the PCT, I started it in reverse position behind every single other person on trail. I may have been the last person to start the trail this year, considering that there was just 10 blank days in the logbooks. So unless someone started after me, I may have been truly the last one to start this year. But then I'm going fast, so I get this really interesting experience of hiking my way through the bubble and meeting those names in the logbooks. And so if I keep cranking, I might work my way. At some point, I might be hiking next to someone who started March 15th or March 30th once I'm up in Washington. Because the way the PCT works is you have permits for the entire trail, which most people hike on. And those permits start March 1st and they run all the way to May 31st. And so borderline nobody starts before March 1st and borderline nobody starts after May 31st. Of course, I'm an exception, starting June, technically June 8th, effectively June 9th. So anyway, I'm now on the back skirts of that bell curve where it's now 5 people per day. And as I keep moving ahead, it's going to increase to 10 people per day and 15. So I know a lot of people like the isolation, and I kind of honestly prefer that, but I'm always most interested to see something that I haven't seen before. So I'm honestly really very interested to see how this bell curve develops as I meet more and more people per day. So I think I'll lose the privacy, but I'll get to meet more people, which is cool, especially after hiking something like 4 months alone on the AT this winter. Alrighty, it is 6:30 in the morning. I've been walking for half an hour now. The sun's starting to rise. And the goal for today is to make it to Walker Pass, which is about 28 miles ahead. And at Walker Pass, there's a couple of towns there. I'm not sure which one I want to go to. Basically, whichever one maybe a trail angel could shuttle me to. And so to get there, I would need to arrive somewhere between 7 p.m. and 8:30 p.m. For someone to pick me up, I would imagine. And so the big difference there is if I can make it by 7 p.m., that might be just enough time to get groceries in town. And charge my devices briefly to then turn around and get dropped back off on trail, at 9 p.m. And the reason I'm trying to make this a shorter run is because really the only thing I need right now would be groceries. And so at the end of tomorrow, I might be at Kennedy Meadows. So there's another resupply option. The problem is I just don't quite have enough food to make it there. So I have to peel off just before it. The towns that are, 28 miles up today. So I'm gonna have to just keep a steady beat today to make it in time. Ideally to get in and out of town. The problem with staying overnight is nobody who you ever stay with is on your walking schedule and wants to wake up at 3 a.m. to give you a ride back to trail, or 4 a.m. Which is what I would want to do tomorrow morning. If I were on trail, that would be when I would want to get up and get moving. So we'll see how it develops. Alrighty, I'm about 6 miles from the road, where I will get a ride into one of 3 different towns. I currently have no cell service, so I've not been able to arrange a shuttle or a trail angel. So hopefully once I get around this mountain, I'll have cell service again. And when I do, I will play the lottery. It's kind of funny just to think that as of right now, there are 3 or 4 towns within like 10 miles, and I have no idea which one I'm going to go to, who's going to take me there, or when I'll even get a ride. So I'm about 2 miles from the bottom of Walker Pass, and I still have no cell service and no idea if or how I will get way out there to where there's a city like 10 miles away. But it's pretty. So I just did another check, and then I had 3 bars, called a trail angel, and landed it on the first try. Someone named Sandy, so shout out in advance to Sandy. Everything's coming together. Man, I remember the first week. This is Oliver right here?
That's Oliver.
Okay.
That's the happy dog.
Yes.
That's the one that you're here for him.
He came sprinting right up.
And then big guy here who's probably a little nervous.
Yeah.
His name is Hops.
Hops.
Like,
oh, yeah.
Jump, jump, jump.
So he's part Chihuahua and miniature pincher.
Yeah. Supposedly.
Hops.
He's scared.
He's shyer. Yeah.
It just came out of nowhere. And I ended up doing 4 rescues in 3 days. And that was brutal.
Anyway, Sandy picks me up. And then I ask her once I'm in the car, is there any chance you're a night owl and you'd be willing to give me a ride back out? And she says, ooh, no. Yeah, I'm actually an early riser. And I said, oh, okay, no problem. Is there any chance or what time do you wake up? Well, she wakes up at 4 a.m. And I said, oh, amazing. Is there any chance I could get a ride just like at 4:30 in the morning back out? She's like, oh, I would, but I have to go to work. And I was like, okay, no problem. Yeah. I can figure out another way. As long as I can get into town tonight, that's all I really need. She's like, well, hold on. Let me call Amy. So as soon as we get out of the pass into town and we get cell service back, she calls Amy, who's another trail angel. And Amy picks up the phone, and she's an early riser. And so I explain my situation, and she says, yeah, what time? And we agree that on 5:15 pickup this morning. So we did that. I stayed overnight. I got groceries. I got a recharge on my phone. That was the first night that I slept in a building. I was actually thinking about keeping a streak going the entire PCT of sleeping outside. But once I lie down in the bed, I was like, okay, no, I'm not going to do that. But it's a bunny crossing the road up there. Actually, that's a good photo. And I think at this point I've realized I should probably be carrying a bug net of some kind. I got to figure that out to put on over my sleeping quilt, because I'm using a quilt which, unlike a sleeping bag, leaves the bottom part kind of unbuttoned. I'm not going to go too into detail on it, but you can Google a sleeping bag quilt. It just lowers the weight of the sleeping bag, but it leaves part of it open to where ants could crawl into it, and they do at night, and spiders can crawl into it, into the sleeping bag with you. And so I just noticed when I was taking a shower the other day, like last night, I had these 3 giant weird looking welts on my skin. And so I just did kind of like a quick review of what the things could be that would cause that. I looked up fire ant bites. It doesn't look like that. I immediately suspected spider bite. I don't know, it just looks weird. And I Googled what spider bites look like, and it looks exactly like what I have. And I Googled different types of spider bites, and they all look roughly the same. It's just over time, depending on how much venom got in you, you have necrosis that forms. So like your tissue starts to rot. So if it expands, it starts to rot. It really got you, whatever it was. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen. But if it does, I guess I'll just have to get off trail. But in most cases, oh, this is the logbook. Let me sign this. People from San Francisco are so funny. They say that they're from they'll just say like, it's like someone who went to Harvard. You ask them where they went to school, and then they say, oh, out east. Or they say like, oh, I went to school in Boston. They'll never say that they went to Harvard. And so people from San Francisco, they never say that they're from San Francisco. They say, oh, I'm from the Bay Area. And that's because they probably don't live in San Francisco proper. But like, it's funny, it's almost like the opposite of Harvard, because in this sense, they live somewhere in the outskirts of San Francisco, the city proper, but they want to be associated with San Francisco, so they say the Bay Area. But like, sometimes they don't even say the San Francisco Bay Area, they just say the Bay Area. And it's like, well, like, I don't know, San Diego is a bay, like which bay, you know? And so, I don't know, it's just one of those like things that I find mildly annoying, but it's not a big deal. And so, anyway, yeah, I guess that's all I was gonna say. This logbook is, yeah, that's the logbook. All right, closing this. So anyway, the spider bites vary in their intensity, and you just gotta monitor it. Typically, they just go away after like 48 hours, but if something goes wrong with them, then they really do start to rot and have issues. And so, luckily in 48 hours, I'll be in Kennedy Meadows, and I think that the bites happened 2 days ago, because I've also had like an allergic reaction on my hands, which I thought was from poodle bush. You can see my finger is swollen. Maybe you can't see, I don't know if you can see or not, but that index finger's got it. The ring finger has it. Like that pad right there is swollen. And then this hand also has it. You can see the bumps on my finger. And then my legs have it as well. Typically a spider bite does not induce an allergic reaction though. It induces a toxic reaction, I think, was what I learned. So anyway, I'm just gonna have to monitor those. And I technically don't know that they're spider bites, but I'm pretty sure that's what I have. And that happened 2 nights ago when I slept on the trail. And so it's generally a bad idea to sleep right on the trail, because animals use the trail at night to navigate. And so it's not only bad because they might interfere with you, it's also bad because you're interfering with them, and that's not cool. But I had to because of the wind the other night. And my bigger issue was not the animals, although I heard animals walking around me on the trail through the grass in the night. The bigger issue was the small spiders and ants who basically walked around me. And if I roll around at night, I start to pinch them, and then they'll bite you because you're actually endangering them at that point. And so anyway, I think I must have rolled on a spider in the night, and then it bit me 3 times. So I will monitor that over the next 48 hours to see if it gets worse. And I'll hop off trail in Kennedy Meadows if it does, but I don't think that it will. I don't know if you can tell or not, but the plants on this little hill here are unlike anything I've seen so far. And I know from previous road trips that these little desert scrubby plants, wild bunches of wheat and like yucca bushes and Joshua trees, are what grows on the outskirts of Death Valley. And right here, when I pop over this hill, I'm going to be overlooking what would be kind of like if nature had suburbs, the suburbs of Death Valley. And so you'll see these plants are what grow all the way out on the valley floor, out here. So I'll zoom in on it when I come over this hill. But you can see, so let me actually contrast it. That hill back there is what everything's looked like for the last couple 100 miles. Let's zoom down. These shrubby plants are what Death Valley looks like, the outskirts. So if I just show right there, you can literally see the difference. 2 different ecosystems in one shot. I think it's almost 7 a.m. now, and it's already hot. It's one of those sizzler suns. I can feel it already. So I don't know how hot it's gonna get here on this ridgeline today, but I was just filming where that city was over there to demonstrate kind of how close I am to Ridge Crest. And given that that's the closest city to where I'll be today, that's my best indicator for the temperature. And it's supposed to be, I think it was 111 is what it said for today. And then in a couple of days, 116 Fahrenheit here. Further out over in Death Valley, in a couple of days, it's going to reach 124 degrees Fahrenheit, which is something like 46 degrees Celsius. And so being higher up here, the temperature should be a little bit lower, maybe by 10 degrees Fahrenheit or more or less. I don't really know, but it's going to be a hot day. This is a good lookout point right here. If I zoom in a little bit out there, way out there, maybe like 8 miles away, that's Ridge Crest. So the forecast for today is that it will hit 111 Fahrenheit, and that later this week it'll reach 116 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm obviously at a little bit higher of an elevation, so the temperatures up here should be a little bit lower than that. But then later this week, out beyond that ridge line, is Death Valley. And so Death Valley is forecasted this week, later this week, to reach 124 degrees Fahrenheit for most of the week for its daily highs. So I'm in the desert still, and I still have a couple more days to go before I'm starting to be out of the desert. Sorry for that filming. And not only am I in the desert, but it's a heat wave in the desert. So I think people heard about the heat wave that hit the East Coast like last week, ending like a couple of days ago. And so now there's kind of a equivalent heat wave now hitting the West Coast. And it's just interesting because I just so happen to be still in the desert section in July during the heat wave. So I think this is about as hot as the PCT can literally get right now, what I'm experiencing. So just interesting to consider that or soak that in. As I kept emphasizing, a May start date for the PCT is considered very late. Let me not exaggerate, a late start. Like it's going to be sizzling hot in the desert. And then I started like June 8th in the night. So kind of a, I don't know, just before mid-June start. And I'm still in the desert as of the first couple of days of July. So, yeah, just a interesting additional challenge. So like hitting the White Mountains and the snow window still was different experience than what most experience. And now hiking the desert in a heat wave on the opposite corner of the United States from like Maine to New Hampshire. So I've experienced, I wouldn't quite call what I guess back when I was in Maine starting out attempting the southbound, I experienced insanely cold temperatures, like -10, -15 when I was on Katahdin. And then now I'm experiencing on the opposite end temperatures today that should be well over 100 degrees Fahrenheit up here in the mountains. And then just right over there beyond that ridge line, 124 degrees Fahrenheit, and then down there like 112 Fahrenheit. So yeah, it's gonna, well, who knows, maybe it'll be an easy day, but presumably it'll be a challenging day. But it's kind of exciting. Again, in the Calendar Year Triple Crown, where you're hiking a continuous footpath, that's what makes it, to me, so much more exciting. You're exposed to all the elements. Like, my analogy is it's a series of needles that you're threading throughout the year. And you have to hit each window, roughly speaking, to proceed to the next section. Otherwise, you've got to flip-flop and hop to another trail. And the things that break those needles are things like ultra cold, high snowfall, ultra hot heat wave conditions in a desert, persistent rain, things like that are what could put you off trail and having to flip-flop. And then also just parks being closed, like Katahdin and Baxter Park on the end of the AT are closed in May and April. All of these are what make the continuous footpath really exciting to me personally. Because the alternative is, as I said before, it's like each trail is its own colored ribbon. And when you're flip-flopping, you're cutting up those colored ribbons and turning them into a patchwork, alternating between trails. And in that process, you're kind of engineering the challenge out of, not all of the challenge. There's still tremendous challenge to completing them on a flip-flop path. But inherently, I guess when I think of like what it means to have become a triple crowner, it means you've hiked all the different terrains, elevations, seasons, desert, mountain, plains, forest, winter, summer, fall, spring, rain, cold, heat, ultra heat, ultra cold, snow, deep fog, dust, all of that you have learned from experience what those are like. They're kind of like merit badges. Right now, I'm earning the ultra hot heat merit badge, hiking the desert in June and July. And even though it's hard, like, that's honestly what keeps me motivated. I think, as I kind of thought on before, if I break the footpath before it's truly necessary, I just feel like I would lose a lot of motivation personally. And even though I'm behind the schedule of where I would be if I'd broken my footpath by hopping, let's say, off the AT when I hit snow, I would certainly be ahead of where I am now. But I have this sense of like accomplishment that I think I wouldn't quite have if I'd flip-flopped. I think I would have a sense of regret. And it's like hiking this whole path on a continuous footpath through where you're forced into the the outer edges of some of these needles or windows in terms of the time of year. You've got to move quickly and hop onto that caboose and make it through, or thread that needle. And there's like, to me, an art form to it. Many things can be art. I think hiking a continuous footpath where you're starting in the winter and you're militantly committed to that footpath, even if it ultimately means you fail at the County or Triple Crown. There's an accomplishment to that to me is beautiful. And the thing is, I still actually have a chance at completing the County or Triple Crown as of where I am right now. And in the comment feed, you know, when I do different little things like ford the Kennebec or arrive at Katahdin in June instead of like sometime in May, or when I'm hiking snow in the whites, you get people who push back and say, oh, this continuous footpath thing seems dumb. You're gonna regret it when you know, let's say hypothetically lose the calendar year accomplishment. And I'm like, no, first off, you're not in my body. You don't know what pains I do feel, or perhaps what pains I don't feel. You don't intimately know how challenging the AT is. And you don't know how challenging the PCT and the CDT are by comparison. I would certainly think a lot of the people naysaying my progress on the AT had no sense that I'd be averaging 29 miles a day on the PCT when I was going 17 and a half on the AT. But I had an intuitive sense that that'd be possible. And now it's happening. And there are many people who just don't appreciate the art of that continuous footpath and what it means. The things, in fact, that make this hike much more exciting, I think, from an audience perspective than a typical thru hike, is specifically that I did, hike the whites in the snow, ford the Kennebec, arrive late by a typical County or Triple Crown standard comparison at Katahdin. But from my perspective, where I'm going for the continuous footpath, I couldn't have arrived at Katahdin any earlier than in a way that would be beneficial than June 2nd, the day that it opened, or June 1st, the day that it opened. And I arrived on June 1st. So if you think about it logically, I was right on track when I arrived at Katahdin. Now people, their brains are broken, or at least they're not looking at it from my perspective, which is that I am genuinely very committed, or seriously committed, to the continuous footpath approach. And you'll get people who will see that I'm like, it's now June or something, and I'm just then finishing the AT. And they're like, oh, you should have flipped. It's like, no. If you're seriously committed to a continuous footpath, you need to be mentally prepared that part of the inherent challenge of a continuous footpath 4-season County or Triple Crown is that you're not going to finish the AT until that park opens. So all season I was aware of that fact, but it's just funny. I don't know, it's just some of the feedback that I get, it's just funny to me. You get people who feel some sense of investment in watching people do these thru hikes. I've seen it on comments on other channels. I guess I'll name it. I was watching Haystack's channel, the guy that was ahead of me on the AT this season, because I got good intel and I actually liked watching his videos. And I remember he got off trail for a little bit. I think in part because there was snow ahead and it was sketchy to go in the whites, but I think for other reasons too. And anyway, the result of all that was he does an update video saying, yeah, like, I'm not sure if or when I'll finish the AT, and that would complete his Triple Crown. But for now, these video logs come to an end. And I read the comments on his channel. Some of them were hilarious. There's some guy that said, like, to be honest, I'm pretty disappointed in you. You know, here I am watching you hike all winter, and I want to see you finish. It's like the guy was critical of him. It's like, dude, this guy's hiking in January in the rain and the snow. He was doing 40-mile days at points, and he's vlogging every day and editing the videos. And you have the gall to say you're disappointed in him for not finishing what was a freakishly fast hike in some of the hardest conditions you could hike that trail. And you have these people seated on their couch pointing their buttery popcorn bony fingers at Haystack for deciding, for reasons not made totally clear, that his hike has come to an end for now. And you get people bullying him. And again, most of the comments were very supportive, but you get people who are criticizing him for stepping off trail. I'm floored at the ignorance of comments like that. It's like, why don't you get your ass off the couch? You go out next January. You hit that rain on day number 1 in 20 degree Fahrenheit weather, maybe 10 degrees Fahrenheit. And you go hiking that day after day. You learn how to edit on a cell phone. That's right, record it on a cell phone. Have interesting content that doesn't suck, and edit it on a cell phone. And still hike 22-mile days on the AT in the winter. Because for you to have any respect from me, if you're the person criticizing him, that's what you'd have to go and do to start to get a sense of what it takes to do that. And so anyway, in a similar vein, at different points along the way, I've had people push back to say, oh, this continuous footpath thing is dumb. You should have broken it a long time ago. It's like, I don't know, like, there's such a thing as the most popular song in the world, and there's such a thing as the best song in the world. How does one distinguish between the two? Well, I had people earlier when I was somewhat critical of the Smokies, when I first got into them at the start, someone pushed back and said, well, this is the most popular park in the United States. More people visit this park than any other park. Therefore, it's the best, implied. I bet if I asked that man to go listen to whatever is the most popular song in the year 2024, if he had the ability to press a red button that would just eliminate it from the face of the earth, he probably would press that button. I bet he wouldn't like it. But if his words mean anything, if his values run forward because they're based on something real and consistent, then he would own that the most popular song in the year 2024 is the best song. And if that song has more plays in history than any other song, then it's the best song ever. But if he doesn't take that position, then I think his words start to lose meaning. His values become unclear. It starts to seem that whatever he likes is what's right. That the conclusion is already held in hand, and then the facts are found afterward that line up to that conclusion, which to me is kind of an easier way to live life, but a less meaningful way to live life. So anyway, that guy who can't distinguish between what's popular and what's best. So if you take, like, I don't know, what's an objectively amazing song, like Bohemian Rhapsody, or Imagine by John Lennon, or God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, or even Good Vibrations by the Beach Boys. And I'm looking for what are, in my opinion, pop songs, but are nonetheless songs of art. Those songs don't have as many plays as songs today. Back in the 60s or even today. But I think if you took a survey of the people who don't just casually listen to music when it's presented to them, i.e. through a boombox at a public pool, or as it's delivered to your ears by the radio in a car, but the people who have accounts where they pay for the premium membership, where there's no advertisements, and they can make their own playlists online and store them offline and go and explore music. And you could be into country music, or you could be into, streamed romance era music, like Wagner or something, or the Pet Sounds era of the Beach Boys, right? Like some of these cult classic genres. But basically someone who's gone deeply into the field of music, if you surveyed those people, I think you would see certain titles that withstand the test of time. And I think it's the timelessness that defines both great ideas and great art. And it's in the timelessness that you reveal truly the great works of humanity. And so, anyway, the person who struggles to distinguish between a sunset in Joshua Tree National Park versus the Smokies National Park because, it's the most visited, is someone who's to an extent missing out on just I think a deeper art to certain things, and it doesn't matter what the topic is. As I've cited before, something like crocheting, or quilt weaving, or types of cheese, or types of geological activity, or types of ecosystems, or the weather, or different types of airplanes. There's all these different things in the world that people are into in a deeply fascinated way. And those people are the ones who I think really distinguish, where the art is in a given field. And I'm saying all that to say there's something beautiful about the calendar year Triple Crown. And there's something, to me, deeply artistically beautiful about the continuous footpath calendar year Triple Crown. And especially one that started in January, because when you start in January, you sign yourself up a little out of whack on all the weather windows, but you start with, if you can toughen through it and make good decisions along the way, and have a little bit of luck with your windows along the way, it's possible. already. I just packed my bag up. I took a nap here for the last 2 hours or so. Because the sun is so hot right now. Or at least it was today. My progress has been slow. And yeah, I just made the call. It makes more sense to sleep while the sun's high in the shade here. And then hike later hours tonight. So I think tonight I might be walking until 11 or midnight. You can see the sun is just barely below the horizon up there. If you look behind me, you can see the sun's lighting up the mountainside. If I had hiked this section an hour earlier, I would have been in direct, harsh sunlight. If I had to guess, I would say that I'm probably hiking this section twice as fast as I would be if I were in the direct sunlight. So if I can maintain this in the shade, which I don't know if I will, for like an hour, the nap that I just got, that I took for about an hour, just became a free nap because I'd catch myself in this shade. Pretty cool. Been climbing this hill for the last, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. What time is it? 8:30. Yeah, last 2 hours. Finally near the top. So I'm gonna cruise for another hour or so along the top, I think, and then down the backside